Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to another live at the Waterhole. Well, we're here at the Juma Waterhole. There were some elephants. I think they may have just moved off into the brush over there. But nonetheless, I'm sure there'll be lots of animals coming down to the Waterhole. My name is Ralph Kirsten. And as per usual, please don't forget that this is a live and interactive experience. So we'd love for you to jump on board with us and send us through your questions and your comments. You can do that by going on the WildEarth website and registering. You can also join the conversation on X, formerly known as Twitter, using the hashtag WildEarth. What is it that you'd like to see? What would you like to chat about? Whatever it is wildlife related, please send it through as we sit back, relax, and watch the animals coming down to quench their thirsts and cool off. It seems overnight there was quite a bit of activity over in East Africa at Old Donyo. There was the big elephant, 1 ton, and he was joined by some lions. So that was very interesting. And then also at Cat Eye, there was a leopard, unknown individual that came through there. So you never do know what we might see. So it looks like it's a typical summer's day here at Juma. Quite windy though, but that being said, I think let's go and have a look what the weather's going to be like across all the different locations. So a little bit of rain expected at Old Donyo. Who knows? Maybe that will bode well for some predators coming through. Otherwise, pretty hot across all the different spots. And, well, when it's hot, this is what we can expect. Lots of elephants coming down to cool off. And, of course, at Jamala, it's pretty packed, as it was yesterday as well. So this being in the Madikwe Game Reserve of the Northwest Province of South Africa, right near to the border of Botswana. But Jamala being down in the south of the reserve. Later on, we may go across to the African Tau, and that's further up north in the reserve. So Moon Rage already coming through, saying good morning from the Carolina coast. Straight back at you, Moon Rage. Welcome aboard. Lovely to have you with us. See that mommy there? Got a very small little baby. Keeping it nice and close. The elephants really do seem to love this waterhole. They love rolling around in the mud, and they do get a nice drink here off on the right. That is their favorite drinking spot. It's because where the fresh water comes out. And then there's a couple of favored wallowing spots as well. That one just behind that little island there in the middle. And then off here on the right, there's also a little spot over on the left, where some of the youngsters like to wallow as well. So Michael saying, great start with the Jamala Ellies. They never disappoint. Absolutely, Michael, especially when it's nice and hot. It looks like it's already now and going to be for the rest of the day as well. And Jive Bunny saying good morning from the UK coast. Good morning back at you, Jive Bunny. Nice to have you on board once again. And Moon Rage saying, at what stage is this watering hole? Meaning, is it in the process of refilling or drying up? So Moon Rage, we have been watching this waterhole. When it's very hot, we do get a lot of activity from the elephants. And as you can see, they love to wallow, but they also drink a lot of water. So the levels do go down, but then the lodge would be refilling it. It's probably borehole water. And so the levels go up and down. The more the elephants are here, the more it goes down, but then they do keep it topped up. So Lenny saying, hello, Ralph. Can't wait to hear some of your stories of life in the bush. Yeah, we'll try and pull some more out there, Lenny. I'll have to delve into the archives. So a question coming from Victorio Scalmandre saying, good morning. I was wondering, why do elephants sometimes have holes in their ears? And, well, Victorio, it's generally just from life, really. You know, they walk through a lot of this thorny brush. And so sometimes it can get hooked on trees, and then it just gives them a little tears. Sometimes it could be from fighting with other individuals. So you'll generally see it's the older ones that have more holes, and it's just like their battle scars of life. But mainly, I would say, due to those thorns that they walk through. And when they get older, the skin probably gets a little bit thinner as well, and then they can get these tears. I've heard of zebra coming in as well. They seem to like that spot over there where the elephants don't really go. Sometimes there's the odd individual, but that's where they get a chance to have a drink. So, yes, Frank M also saying that we need a lot of rain here. Quite right, Frank M. This is a semi-arid part of the country. So generally low rainfall. There has been a little bit of rain about, but they can take, well, they can use whatever they can get, really. You can see that it is very dry. There's just always something going on with these lilies. Amazing to watch. The bulls generally fighting and wrestling, pushing and shoving. And the females more concerned with just getting in, cooling off and quenching their thirst. Lots of lovely vocalizing there as well from the Ellies. Those low rumbles. So yesterday we were chatting a little bit about infanticide with lions, and with us seeing these zebra here on the opposite bank, I do want to chat about their darker side, zebra. I mean, obviously we do love to see them. They're one of the iconic animals that we do get in Africa, but a lot of people don't know about their harems and, you know, their social structure, etc. And a lovely article on Sabi's website speaking on their darker side. And it's not the black stripes or their black skin, but instead, as I've mentioned, their social structure. So zebra are grouped into harems where there's one dominant male with as many as 6 females and their foals in the group. All younger males with no harem will form bachelor herds and wait until they're big enough to start their own harem. But zebra stallions will fight with each other for females and will even go as far as stealing females from one another. If the female which has been stolen is pregnant, the new male will literally rape her until such time as she has aborted the pregnancy. An abortion would be done by releasing hormones that would cause her body to reabsorb the fetus, or she could miscarry, or if she gave birth to a live foal, it can be kicked to death by the male. This seems extreme, but it ensures that the strongest genetics survive, and the killing of another male's young is not uncommon practice in the animal kingdom, and as with the lions, called infanticide. And the fights between males are often very violent and can end in death. The males will attempt to bite the other's neck and legs, and fights can last for very long periods of time. Eventually, when one of the males is exhausted and falls to the ground, the other male might even kick its competitor to death. So we do see zebra being quite nice to each other, as you can see there, but they can also be very nasty to each other as well. Lots of biting, lots of kicking. Whenever you see a zebra without a tail, chances are that it's been bitten off by another zebra. Now, Lenny saying the vocals, obviously of the elephants, remind him of the Jurassic Park movies. Yeah, it's very interesting, the vocals of the elephants. And having their high-pitched trumpets to the low rumbles, all sorts of communication. So it looks like those zebra have now drunk their fill and heading off, maybe to go and look for some shade. Now, Miles was asking which mammal has the most forms of communication. So just a quick search online, and I've found, I would say that elephants definitely have to be up there with some of the most complex communication between them. And I would have thought the likes of whales as well. But according to the Scientific American, they actually say that prairie dogs have the most sophisticated vocal language ever decoded. Okay, so that doesn't mean that it's the most sophisticated overall, but only the one that has been decoded. They say even better than chimps, dolphins, and orcas. But this could change with further research into chimp, dolphin, and orca language, and I'm sure elephant as well. But right now, they're saying prairie dogs are where it's at. That's a typical pose of an elephant, and they're just smelling out in the area in front of them with the trunk up like that, resting on the forehead. And he's obviously all just trying to squash in under the shade.
If you are a driven nature enthusiast with a background in communications, then this message is for you. WildEarth is calling for volunteers to moderate our web and social media chat platforms during our live broadcast. Do you keep up with the latest trends on social media? Do you have quick fingers and a sharp eye? Then we're looking for you. To apply, email your CV to us at jobs@wildearth.tv. Join the WildEarth team today. WildEarth, connecting with nature.
So Caden John was asking, do they, and speaking of the zebras, do they bite the tails to show dominance like hyenas do with ears? Yeah, well, it's not quite the same with the hyenas, because the zebras, they're obviously just fighting between males and establishing dominance through the fight. But it's a little bit more complex with the hyenas. And a lovely article on Hyenidae saying hyenas are known to be one of the most aggressive and savage animals in the animal kingdom. They're known to attack and kill their prey with their powerful jaws, sharp teeth. But what many people don't know is that hyenas also have a habit of biting each other's ears off. There's a few theories as to why hyenas bite each other's ears off. One theory is that they do it to assert dominance over other members of their clan or their pack. By biting off another hyena's ear, the aggressor is sending a clear message that he's the alpha male and is not to be messed with. Another theory is that hyenas bite each other's ears off as part of a ritualistic mating ritual. When a male and female hyena are ready to mate, they'll engage in a fierce battle where they will bite and claw at each other until one of them finally gives up. And the victor will then mate with the loser, and the ear biting will have served as a way to establish dominance and prove that the victor is the stronger of the two. Whatever the reason, it's clear that hyenas biting each other's ears off is obviously not a very pleasant thing. It's brutal and savage, and it's not for the faint-hearted. Yeah, so... But with the zebras, it's along those lines, but not quite the same. Generally, but just between the males, not really so much so with male and female. See that mommy there? I think coming just to protect that little one. That's often why they don't spend too much time at the waterhole, because the bulls get a little bit boisterous. Then they obviously can injure the youngsters, who are having an absolute ball over there. Look at that. So, Dark Main Lover was just saying, good morning, Ralph. Good morning back to you, Dark Main Lover. And also commenting, wow, that's so brutal with hyenas biting ears off. That's serious, and they'll never grow their ears back. Yeah, and we've seen lots of hyenas with very tattered ears, and some of them literally right off as well, some hanging, and it is brutal. It's not nice to see, but definitely part and parcel of their social behavior. And Jive Bunny saying the little Ellie babies are having a fun pool session. Well, they definitely are this morning, aren't they? What a joy to watch. So, nice question coming in from Axel saying, do mammals like elephants produce serotonin and dopamine? That's a lovely question, and I found a nice article on the Daily Dodo, and they say that all animals have the same basic brain chemicals like dopamine, serotonin, endorphins, and cortisol. Neurochemicals motivate a body to approach what feels good and avoid what feels bad. Animals don't override these impulses, so they help us understand how our brain chemicals work. And obviously, there's lots of all these chemicals flowing currently with these Ellies having so much fun. But a thirsty elephant surges with dopamine when it finally drinks water, and that wires it to find water in the future. The next time the elephant is thirsty, it walks in the direction that feels good. This works because dopamine is triggered by the sights and smells of waterholes past. Conscious effort is not necessary because electricity in the brain flows like water in a storm, finding the path of least resistance. Every neuron active during a dopamine experience gets linked to the well-developed dopamine pathway, so it flows easily in the future. Dopamine triggers a good feeling when an animal meets a need and paves a pathway to release more good feelings when we see another way to meet a need. And the first step of a 20-mile trek to water is fueled by dopamine, and so is every step after that. Humans associate dopamine with the joy of finishing a marathon, falling in love, or finding a bar that's open at 2 a.m. in the morning. And these don't seem like survival needs until you remember that the mammal brain wires itself in youth when your needs are met through others. And your early dopamine surges wired your dopamine to turn on in ways that worked before. And if you keep trying to stimulate your dopamine, you can end up repeating a behavior more than is good for you. And this is less of a problem in the state of nature, where hunger, thirst, predation, and reproductive competition are constant threats. Dopamine relieves that sense of threat, so a brain that constantly seeks it is more likely to survive, which is very interesting. Lots of dopamine going on here. That is for certain. And when it's very hot, it's obviously dopamine that's driving all these elephants to the waterhole to get the sense of cool and joy, playing in the mud. And so I think a very big part of this behavior. So excellent question there. Yeah, so Nadine, director, asking a question. You can see very clearly on these elephants the joy that they're experiencing, but how and when will you notice it with other animals? For instance, the zebra, maybe leopards. And I would say that you could equate that to, nice and early in the mornings when it's nice and cool, because a lot of these other animals obviously don't go swimming in the water, and we don't really see them enjoying themselves like this in this kind of scenario. But in the early mornings when it's nice and cool, you often see the animals, a lot of the antelope and the zebra, etc., particularly the youngsters who do it a lot more, but you see it with the adults as well, running around and jumping about, and you can just see that they are experiencing some levels of increased dopamine, which is, and that they're having fun because they're not doing it for any other reason, um, you know, uh, stretching their legs. But when you look at the likes of leopards and so on, I mean, you could equate that to house cats. They really enjoy when they get up to a scratching post, for instance, and sharpening their claws. Um, and sometimes even when they make a kill and they're rubbing themselves on the kill, and sometimes even on the likes of buffalo dung, really getting stuck into rolling on in these different things, and they can really, you can see that they're enjoying it. Their body language also does give a lot of telltale signs. With the cats, obviously, when they're not having fun and they're angry, you see the ears go back, and their tails are flicking from side to side. But when they're experiencing pleasure, they could purr, for instance, but not all cats can purr. But this is a way that they do show that kind of joy and pleasure. But I definitely think that a lot of the animals will express this, but in really different behaviors. But you can tell.
Ubuntu. I am because we are. A new dawn for the fastest growing continent on the planet. Be part of Africa's Web3 awakening. Ubuntu token, launching 29th February 2024. Join the allow list now.
Right, so Adeline was asking, do most animals have some form of brutal mating ritual? I would say, Adeline, obviously they're all different. Some do, some don't. But lovely article on BBC Earth talking about mind-blowing animal mating habits. They say we all have our own techniques when it comes to looking for love. For animals, though, sex simply means spreading your genes as far and wide as possible. However, just because mating rituals and sex are a mean to an end, that doesn't mean it's an uncomplicated process. Whether they're mating for life or just for the breeding season, each species has evolved its own recipe for sexual success. From bravura courtship performances that require their own stage to impersonating the opposite sex, the courtship and mating rituals of these different examples of animals that I'm going to give to you will astonish you. Now, African bullfrogs, their mating ritual is complex and brutal. Young male African bullfrogs congregate in small pools of shallow water. And the central areas of these breeding pools, or leks, are occupied by the larger males who chase off their smaller competition. They also fight amongst themselves, sometimes resulting in injury or even death, as the most dominant males attempt to stop the others from breeding. A female will swim up to the group in the breeding pool and avoids the smaller males around the outside by swimming underneath them to emerge in the center of the mass of bullfrogs. She's now in the domain of one of the large dominant males that has fought off the others and subsequently mates with him. Then we have the Argus pheasant, and there aren't many creatures that prepare their own courtship arena with as much care as the male Argus pheasant of Southeast Asia. His impressive plumage, covered in ocelli or eye spot markings, deserves a spotlight, so he finds an area around 6 to 7 meters squared within the lowland jungle. He meticulously prepares it by removing any forest debris that might detract from his performance. Then he sends out early morning invitations, using a particular call to attract the females. When a female accepts and joins him in this arena, he circles around her, attempting to oppress her with a foot-stomping dance. And this concludes with a striking display in which he uses his wings to create a fan of feathers. And if she is suitably admiring, they will mate. Then there's the anglerfish, and this is very interesting, I think. And if you're hoping for a story of gentle romance, this is not the one. Female anglerfish were first recorded and studied in 1833, but for a long time, no one knew what the males looked like. And it wasn't until 1924 that biologists realized that the small fish found hanging off female anglerfish were actually her mating partners, not her offspring, as previously thought. How does it work? Well, when they want to mate, the male anglerfish eats a hole in the side of the much larger female and embeds himself. Their skin and blood vessels and digestive systems fuse together, and his eyes and fins and some of his organs drop off or wither away. So he effectively becomes a parasite living on the female, and his only role is to occasionally provide sperm for breeding. Crazy. Now, ostriches, as well as being the largest living birds, they're also one of the 3% of birds to have a penis. Most birds don't have penises and mate using a cloacal kiss. The cloaca being the bird's excretory passage. And the male bird passes sperm to the female when both the cloaca are engaged. Ratites, which is a group to which ostriches belong, along with other flightless birds like emus, rheas, and kiwis, all have penises. They enlarge them using a burst of lymphatic fluid rather than with blood like most mammals and reptiles. Females know a male is entering the breeding season when his shins change from a pale pink to a rather dashing crimson red. Interesting, all of these different breeding and mating behaviors of the animals. Anybody ever witnessed elephants mating? It is a sight to behold. So I think we're just going to hang here for a little while because these elephants are really putting on a show for us. There's a little bit of activity at most of the waterholes, but not anything like this. So I think we'll just let this ride a little longer, and maybe something else will come down that's interesting at some of the other waterholes, and we'll go across there then. So I think a nice little conclusion on this article from BBC Earth. They're saying, because they go through a number of different animals, and every one of the mating behaviors is just as interesting as the next. But there's obviously some similarities between the courtship and mating rituals of animals and our own. Both involve display, preening, selection based on attributes, possessiveness, and a certain amount of crafty behavior. We all know that finding the right mate is a complicated business, but some of these animals make our own efforts look positively puny. So the next time you're about to swipe right, just be grateful that that's all you have to do. I always remember with the orb web spiders, I would always show the students those, and the females are huge, and the males, they normally stay on the same web as the female. Normally one big female and lots of little males. They're normally on the opposite side of the web, because if they come too close to her, she'll eat them. So what they do is they wait until an insect flies into the web, and while she's busy with the insect and her prey, she's busy wrapping it in silk and busy injecting venom into it or whatever it might be. She's otherwise occupied, and they quickly scoot around the other side of the web and obviously deposit sperm. And then quickly run back onto the opposite side of the web again before she's able to grab them and eat them. Sometimes she does, if they're too slow, or she gets just, she loses the distraction and sees them coming. So it's always interesting to watch as well. The next time you see an orb web, just wait until an insect goes in there and see what happens.
Good afternoon and welcome to WildEarth's Bush Hub here in the Western Kruger. My name is James Henry, Gerrit is on camera, and over the next 30 minutes we're going to look at the highlights that took place in the field over the last 24 hours. We'll have a look at yesterday afternoon's sunset safari, this morning's sunrise safari, with an eye to planning this afternoon's activities in the field. This is On Safari.
So Landon was asking which animal species has the shortest and longest mating ritual. So Landon, I found that they say that the brown Antichinus, it's a small little marsupial. It looks like a little mouse. And they say that for 2 weeks every mating season, a male will mate as much as physically possible, sometimes mating for up to 14 hours at a time, flitting from one female to the next. And all that testosterone revs up his stress hormone production into overdrive, which crashes his immune system. So that in turn makes him extremely vulnerable to disease and infection, and oftentimes he dies. And that's mostly also before he's young or even born. So scientists call this kamikaze mating technique suicidal reproduction. So it actually turns out that for many species, sex kills. For instance, take the honeybee. And the male honeybee, his primary job is to mate with the queen. But sadly for him, he only gets to mate once, because during the act, his reproductive organs are ripped off and his testicles explode. So in the process, his semen shoots up through her oviduct, where she stores it for later use. And here's an interesting one, the barnacle. Um, and that little crustacean has proportionally the longest penis of any animal on Earth, spanning up to 10 times his body size. That's like a human's reaching the length of a bowling lane. And the barnacle needs it because he can't move around. So he casts out his giant penis like a fishing line to find a mate. And it waves about in the current, reaching to touch and fertilize the female organs of its neighbor. Now, Neva was asking, do snakes have courtship displays? And Neva, yes, absolutely. It's very interesting. I've seen a lot of displaying and mating snakes. Sometimes you find them in a big ball, and there can be multiple of them. But in general, courtship in snakes involves an initial approach, juxtaposition of males and females' cloaca, and the insertion of one hemipenis, a pattern that is enriched by a diversity of behaviors, which could be chasing, mounting, jerking, biting, and all sorts, depending on the species. So some have these real elaborate courtship displays, some not so much. Such cute little babies around now as well. This has just been fabulous. He was almost a little bit overzealous, nearly went down the little cliff, but stopped himself just in time. See how the tail's pointing straight out the back. He really means business. Alrighty, so as wonderful as this is, it's not the only waterhole that we do have. So just for a bit of a change of scenery and to see what else is going on, I think let's head on over to Namibia and the Etosha National Park. So you can see a little bit of clouds around. There has been some rain here, and quite significant amounts of rain here in the northern parts of Namibia, so much so that a lot of the ephemeral rivers were actually flowing, and there was some decent flooding as well. So when there's clouds about, there can be rain coming, because if you know anything about Namibia and this part of the desert, for there to be clouds, it means that there could be rain sometime. And the old Damara people, the elders, they would always speak of that if there was a small cloud above the Brandberg mountain, that would mean that the rain is coming, it's imminent. So we always used to look for that. And when I was there just recently, a few weeks ago, there was this permanent little cloud above the Brandberg. And Bob, in the evenings, we had some rain as well. So the elders were definitely correct. As we see these gemsbok, oryx, gazelle, getting in their water for the day. True desert-adapted animals that never need to drink water in their entire lives. But obviously, if there is water available, they will drink as well. So Freya was asking, do gemsbok have a territorial dance like Nyala males? Freya, not quite. They don't do a dance like the Nyala do. These guys, they will just fight. And it can literally very often be a fight to the death. And I've done a lot of trekking and walking around Namibia, Damaraland, and in the south as well. in the Nammerbrand, south of Sossusvlei, and we've often come across dead oryx males with horns still stuck in them, and then you often come across other males with only one horn. So very aggressive between the males, and using those very long horns of theirs in battle. Only difference between males and females: the males got much thicker horns than the females. Then just a message, and just to let you know also that from the 1st of March, the sunrise safari will be remaining at 6 a.m. Central African time. On safari show will be from 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Central African time, and the sunset safari will be from 3:30 p.m. Central African time. So that's the time change from the 1st of March, once again. And the sunrise safari, 6 a.m. on safari at 3 p.m. and the sunset safari at 3:30 Central African time.
Good afternoon and welcome to WildEarth's Bush Hub here in the Western Kruger. My name is James Henry, Gerrit is on camera, and over the next 30 minutes we're going to look at the highlights that took place in the field over the last 24 hours. We'll have a look at yesterday afternoon's sunset safari, this morning's sunrise safari, with an eye to planning this afternoon's activities in the field. This is On Safari.
So Millie was asking, do you think that the minerals within the Namibian soil are more beneficial to the animals? So Millie, in large parts of Namibia, it's very sandy, and not many plants are sort of very well adapted to growing in quite an unfertile soil and also with very little moisture. But in general, Namibia's soils range from barren sand and rock to low quality sand dominated to relatively fertile soils. The best soils are in the north, and that's in the Otavi Mountains, in parts of the central and southern portions of the plateau, as well as in the Caprivi Strip. This is in the northeastern part of Namibia, very tropical, very similar to the Okavango Delta. But water, not soil fertility, is the primary constraint to the plants and the animals as well. But both in the densely populated Ovambo region in the north and in the commercial farming areas, overuse of the land has also reduced a lot of the tree and bush cover. Also, compacted soils leads to erosion, and also the lowering of the water table. Because of a lot of siphoning out of these waters being in this very water scarce environment by humans. So everything does play a role. But here next to the Etosha Pan, the soils are relatively fertile, and that's actually why you find this park and why it's teeming with wildlife, is because of these minerals that you get here, and obviously the plants that thrive. So Parker was asking how many birds of prey species can be found in Namibia. Parker, they say that worldwide there's 292 species of diurnal or day birds of prey, daytime active, and 162 nocturnal, night active species of owls. And on the African continent, there's 110 diurnal species and 45 nocturnal species. So in Namibia, there's 59 diurnal and 11 nocturnal. And that's just species or large birds of prey. So what we would call raptors, and both nighttime and daytime active. So what's that? That's 70 in total in Namibia. So Diane from the UK was saying they don't seem to be bothered, I think the animals, by the human voices. Diane, I've been here in person, and there's been a lot of noise going on. Yeah, so you sometimes have Italians and Spanish. They like to talk a lot and they're very loud. And the animals do not change their behavior here whatsoever. I think it's just because that this waterhole has had this viewing platform for so long that, very similar to vehicles, they become accustomed to it, habituated, and it really doesn't bother them one little bit. Sometimes kids screaming. There is no change of behavior whatsoever from any of the animals, no matter how much noise people make at this waterhole. Some other waterholes that are a little bit newer and the animals aren't quite used to the activity from the people, it can have a real effect on their behavior. At Jamala, we've seen a little bit of the elephants sometimes, but I think that there was a little bit of construction work going on or renovating. Maybe the use of power tools and stuff, that was maybe what they were reacting to. But as the years go on, I think they'll probably relax just like these animals here. But very often people ask me, don't the animals get a fright, or when people are speaking loud or whatnot? There's absolutely no change in their behavior. Then Red Collared was saying, hi everyone, is there a reason other than dominance that gemsbok have such extremely long antlers? Now, obviously remember that these and all the African wildlife and the antelope, they have horns, not antlers. So difference in the composition of what the horns are compared to antlers. And horns, they only get one pair. And it's bony outgrowths. They're attached to the skull, so it's bony outgrowths from the skull, covered in the keratin, the horn. And with antlers, they shed them every year. So sorry, I just wanted to clear that up as well. And so we speak of horns with the African wildlife, and I would say the primary reason is more so to protect themselves against predation, and then also between male dominance. But obviously the females don't have it, to fight with each other. With them, it's purely for protection, as a weapon against lions mostly. And if you've ever seen an oryx, a gemsbok, be attempted to be preyed on by lions, they're very good at using those horns. So the lions need to be very careful. Just like the weapon of the zebra would be its kick, with the oryx, it's very adept at using those horns. So Joshua was asking which animals can be found near Walvis Bay and the Skeleton Coast. Joshua, lots of animals. Along the Skeleton Coast, I'll just tell you from my own experience. Well, from Walvis Bay, obviously, there's the lagoon, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There you've got lesser and greater flamingos, you've got pelicans, a lot of bird life, and also a couple of endemic species. You've got the little dolphins. Now, I'm just racking my brain. I've forgotten what the heavy-side dolphins that are endemic to Namibia. They're small little dolphins. They're only about a meter long as adults. And then, so obviously, and a lot of fish, the Cape salmon, which we call a kabeljou, and steenbras and all sorts of different fish. But because it's a cold current, the Benguela current, there's not a big diversity of species in the ocean, but there's a lot of them. So very interesting that. But then as we go into the land, a lot of different endemic bird species, and then brown and spotted hyenas, and the likes of springbok, gemsbok, mainly, and then even the potential of mountain zebra, but it's mostly springbok and gemsbok. And going up the coast, obviously lots of seals as well, the Cape fur seal, and there's a massive colony at Cape Cross. And then going up the Skeleton Coast, there's also lions, desert lions, that come through and feed on the seals, and the odd springbok and oryx as well. So that's generally right along the coastline. As you go inland, then you start to get the Damara giraffe or the Angolan giraffe, which is the smallest of all the species, as well as black rhino, and teeming with springbok and oryx and ostriches and ground squirrels and suricats. There's kudu as well. And baboons as you go into the oasis, the ephemeral rivers, and you get desert elephants as well. So, Namibia is a wonderful country and very, very special in terms of the species that you find there.
This is On Safari. Now remember, this is live and interactive, so we'd love to hear from you.
To be having these incredible experiences in this wild underwater forest.
It was just one of those things which I don't think I'll ever see again in my life.
Thanks for joining us on our Sunrise Safari.
You can hear the people that are speaking are the dominant local culture, the Ovambus, and a lot of their language is very difficult to understand from my perspective. But they speak with Nawa, Shirin Nawa. So Rowan was asking which animal that Namibia is known for. Have you not yet seen? Rowan, I'm trying to think. Last year, it was the first time that I'd seen a mola mola, a sunfish. I'd always wanted to see that, and I saw it in Walvis Bay Lagoon, and we saw a huge one. I spotted it. It was the skipper estimated it to be around 2 tons. It was massive. So that was probably one of the only species that I haven't seen in, I've been going to Namibia for about 20 years. And I lived there. I got married there. I would say it's my second home. I used to live in Swakopmund. And I think I've pretty much covered all of them. Those heaviside dolphins, that was one that I'd always wanted to see. All of the 14 endemic birds that you find nowhere else in the world. I've seen all of those. All the very special plants, the stone plants, and all that you find in the desert, the different lichens, etc. And obviously, from the Caprivi Strip all the way to along the top northern border, right through the central areas, down to the south and the Fish River Canyon, and all the way to the Orange River. I've traveled this place, on tours and on safari for so many years that I've pretty much seen everything in terms of the different species. Even the violet, the chestnut weavers. I've only seen them once, but I saw about 50 of them nesting in a tree in Damaraland when I was looking for the desert elephants. That was very special. Cinderella waxbills, also. Very special little bird. So Sanjeev Roy was saying, but of late, rhinos are not safe in Etosha. Yeah, there has been a couple of poaching incidents. Nothing to compare with what has been going on in the Kruger Park, but one incident is one too many. I don't think they've had more than a handful, but it has increased in the last 2 years or so. And I think there was one or two in the other parts where the rhinos aren't contained within a park into Damaraland. So, yes, there has been. But you also have to go on to the fact that black rhino aren't as easy to sort of poach, to hunt as white rhino, which have taken the brunt of the poaching scourge. Because of their activity, and also that they're not as aggressive as a black rhino. So it takes a little bit more skill to get into or take down a black rhino than it would with white rhinos. So maybe that's helped a little bit. Also, the anti-poaching has been great in Namibia. But like I say, yeah, you're quite right. It has increased in the last couple of years. So Patisse McGagan was saying, as a scuba diver myself, envious you have seen a mola mola, Ralph. Yeah, I was absolutely stoked. I thought it was a seal, with one of its fins up. What do you call them? The seals, the flippers. One of its flippers up, but it was almost doing like a kung fu. So I said, hey, that's not a normal seal. And the skipper said, you're right, it's a mola mola. And we moved in closer to it, and it was absolutely huge. Alrighty, so it is now time for us to also include the Africam water holes. So that's exactly what we're going to do.